Welcome to A Canadian Investing in the U.S., a podcast and YouTube channel focused on Canadians buying real estate with host Glenn Sutherland.
Well, welcome to a new episode of A Canadian Investing in the U.S. with Glenn Sutherland. This week I got Ryan Spenser back. Ryan was back on episode 156, so it was like 3 years ago. And Ryan and I were just chatting on Facebook, I think, or a text, and just catching up. And I'm like, you know what, we should catch up on the podcast. So, Ryan, maybe give everyone a little bit of a intro who you are, and then we'll do some catching up and see if we can help some people, add some value.
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess we'll maybe do a quick recap of the old episode. I believe I didn't watch it, but I do believe we had touched on how at the time I had a duplex in Canada, and I bought a package of 3 houses in the US for $8,000, and they were all pretty much a wreck. And I'd renovated 2 of those 3 houses for $60,000 total. And then I'd had a third that had a squatter in it, or a tenant, depending on how you look at it, that we converted to a rent to own, just because at the time it was COVID 2020 and the courts weren't open. So that worked well for
Good
me.
solution.
It's a low entry. So in the intervening years, the way that worked out has been that those first 2 houses have been great earners. I've had almost no problems with them at all. Tenants have been there a long time.
That's awesome.
I think I've had 1 turn in the 4 years, but it's been steady. And other investors are starting to come into the area too and fix up other houses around. So that's always good for property values. The third house that was the hoarder house, and we did as a rent to own. They did eventually end up abandoning it and just leaving in the middle of the night with no word to anybody. So what happens then, if you're wondering on a rent to own, is that we simply go through the eviction process because they're failing to pay their rent and their obligations to the agreement, and I get the house back. And that was basically what happened. Now, the house I got back was in rough shape. There was a hole in the ceiling the size of a skylight, which is probably why they abandoned it, because they couldn't afford to fix it, because when you're on a rent to own, all the maintenance is your responsibility. So got it back and ended up renovating that and put about $35,000 into that. And now it's rented for $750 a month, and those tenants are pretty happy there. In the process of getting that rented out, re-rented out, I did a little bit of digging into the property records and realized I hadn't bought 3 houses, I'd bought 4 houses.
What?
There was a house in the backyard, essentially, that because of the size of the property, it looked like a totally separate house with a separate lot, and just never realized that it belonged to me too.
That's wild.
And the reason it became an issue and sort of got investigated was because there were squatters in that one as well. And that was so had to go through the process of getting them out, which thankfully, as you know, in Indiana and many of the red states there, is a breeze compared to here. Within a few days to a month, they're gone, right? So got them out, and that'll probably be another $30,000-$40,000 to renovate, and that'll be a good earner too, I'm sure, once it's finished.
That's I'm just thinking about that, and people are like, oh, squatters, but squatters, it's been years of owning that property, if there was no one living in it, might even be in worse condition. Or what do you think? Or do you think that squatters more damage or save?
Yeah, in this particular case, the damage is very extensive. There was a house, I guess, or a garage nearby that had burnt down in the preceding years, and the siding was melted on this house. Inside, the squatters they were addicts, so they had stolen all of the copper pipe and all of the wire out of the walls. So there was no lighting and no plumbing and nothing, right? The only thing, it had good bones, and bones were about all it had. Let's put it that way. It's going to be a big renovation, but I mean, the nice thing about those areas is that there's a lot of people hungry for work, and it's not as hard as finding contractors in Canada, where to put on a gutter is $10,000, right? Like it's a totally different world down there in terms of available skilled labor.
That makes sense.
The financials do make sense if you're in it for the long-term cash flow. The truth is that the $40,000 that I'll put into it, the ARV will not be higher than that 40,000, right? So in this particular area, the ARV might be a little bit lower, in part because it is a second house on the same property.
Right.
So the two houses together, I think would be worth maybe about 80, even fixed up is kind of what my realtor and property manager tells me for the area. So, it'll break even in terms of equity, but the cash flow, I mean, if you just hold on to it for a year and then sell, then you're net positive by 20%, right? So, you got to keep everything in perspective. And on single properties where it's not a duplex, the rent to own model is very popular down there as well, which then you don't have to worry about maintenance, and so you can definitely get a return that if you're willing to sit on the property for a little while.
That's interesting, the rent to own idea on this, because I know even I haven't done a rent to own in Indiana before. And I know, like, when I was doing it in Kansas City, it's more common to do a contract for deed, which is almost like, it's seller financing almost to them, right?
Yeah.
More common to that. And then when I was doing in Ohio, it was mostly lease options, which are basically they're a tenant through the whole procedure. And then at the end of that, they still have to go get a mortgage and buy the property, right? Instead of like in a contract for deed where they're paying it down and they're working on it's like a seller finance deal where they're doing.
Yeah.
Which way do you typically do it in Indiana?
It's more like the seller finance deal where it's simply payments until it's paid off. That's the way it seems to work in Indiana, where it's it would be like $700 a month for 15 years, right? And then they pay the property taxes and all the utilities and all the maintenance is all their responsibility, is kind of the thing, right? So I mean, $700 a month for 15 years is, I think, 120 something thousand dollars, 126,000. So if you're only 40 in, I mean, that's a decent return if you don't mind waiting the timeline that it takes, right? If you're looking to flip your money faster, there's different markets for that. That's not this market. It's more just a casual, easy cash flow market.
And then the taxes will be better on doing it like an installment sale like that, spreading it across 15 years rather than taking the 80,000 or 80, whatever it was, $86,000 in all at one chunk, right? It'll spreads it out. It's a lot easier. And also you could do it as almost like, well, I'm not an accountant, but I'm wondering if you could do it almost like a rental or if it falls under like an installment sale. I guess that's an accountant question. I mean, yeah.
And the other exit plan is to accumulate a number of doors. Like right now, I've got 11 actually there now, including the first four. I bought a fourplex and a couple other singles.
Yeah.
And so I'm at 11 doors now in Indiana. And one of the other exit plans I've kind of stumbled across is that once you get into the 11 plus 10 plus doors, 20 doors, something like that, you can sell them as a portfolio, and then it's treated more along the lines of a commercial. And because the income is so high, you can actually exit a little bit better than you might if you were just selling as singles, which is the opposite of where it is in a lot of markets, right? So the cap rate, if the houses are all in good condition, you can sell it like a 10 cap, or at least that's the last time I checked. So if you've got 10 doors, and they're each earning 700, at a 10 cap, you're going to sell them better than you would at, say, 50,000 a door is what you might sell them for.
Sure.
Right. Especially if you buy right, if you buy it, one of the tax sale auctions, you can buy houses down there for, $1,000, $2,000, every year. They do a tax sale. and you have to follow the process. There's a process I'd recommend. You got to get a lawyer and file all the paperwork, or have your lawyer file all the proper paperwork at the proper times, because of the redemption periods and things like that allow the person to buy back their house. There's a period of time that if you're buying a tax deed, they have a time to buy the house back, right? And then if they don't, then you get it. But there is a process but the point is that you can get houses there for almost free, really. And they're in rough shape, but again, the cost to repair them for a basic repair to a rentability standard where the market will give you a tenant for that place is relatively low.
Yeah, and you just mentioned contractors again, and you compared them to Ontario contractors and how they're much more affordable. Do you find that the knowledge is at the same level for contracting, or the quality is at the same level when you're paying such a smaller amount for the contracting? Hello, everybody. Thanks for listening to the podcast. I just wanted to let you know that I've created a new coaching program. I believe the new coaching program has way more value than any of the programs that have even existed in the past. What we've done is pre-recorded all the lessons so that you can work through it at your own pace, which is pretty cool. And then we're going to meet up on a regular basis to answer the questions, do deal analysis, and actually spend our time together working on things instead of spending our time learning things. I think this will make a seamless transition to buying in the United States and will help you solve a lot of your problems. If this is of interest to you, go to glensutherland.com/coaching. I hope to help you guys invest in the United States, and I hope we provide as much value as possible. Back to the podcast.
I would say that the quality varies, and it would probably depend on the size of the population center that you're investing in. In this particular city, the population is only 60,000, which is very small, and so my contractor pool is limited. But I found them to be relatively competent, at least as much as any contractor I've met in Canada. But just like any contractor, you have to watch them, and it's best if you if you are going to invest remotely, you really should have some basic knowledge on repairs and things. Just to give you an example, I had an electrical problem at one of my properties. The tenant's dryer would run but not heat up, and they bought 3 dryers before they called, and they said, "Look, it's not the dryer. We've had the repair guys out. We've switched dryers. There's something wrong here." So we sent out
handyman or
a handyman. Yeah, my property manager is one of the many handyman that she outsources to. And I don't know whether he looked at it himself, but he seemed to have another guy that came out and was an electrician and gave me a repair bid of $7,500. And it's substantial. And I'm going through it, and I'm just asking some basic questions, because I'm saying, like, what is he doing for $7,500? Like, I know in Canada, a whole new panel costs about $2,000. I literally just had 2 panels done at another duplex I have in Canada, and the 2 panels together in 200 amp service was $3,000 Canadian. So what are you doing for $7,500? Like, that's something's not making sense right now. And then they said, well, we got to replace the whole panel, and we need to do a new mast, and we have all this work to do. And it didn't sound right to me, because he didn't have electrical problems through the whole house. He had one outlet that wasn't working, which is the dryer outlet, and it still worked. There's still power going to it, but so I have some basic electrical knowledge. I know that a dryer runs on 30 amp. 30 amp requires two hot wires and one neutral. And my immediate assumption was that perhaps there was a loose connection, or something was amiss with the electrical connections themselves, and maybe only one hot was active instead of the 2 hots. Right. And so I sent my own guy, another guy that I trusted, to have a look. And sure enough, the only thing that needed to be done was it needed a new breaker. So that was a $50 repair, not a $7,500 repair. So
It's
always,
a little bit different.
yeah, I strongly recommend that you don't trust anybody, and that for anything you get at least 2 quotes, and generally 3 is better. And if you are going to invest remotely, that these people don't have connections. Like you should always have a backup contractor that has no connection to your property manager or the other contractor that's working, so that there's no collusion, um, you know, where they get,
Yeah.
they get themselves into debt and they're like, well, that rich Canadian will give us a whole bunch of money. He doesn't know any better. He's not coming to have a look.
Yeah.
Right. So always get multiple quotes. That's probably the easiest way if you're not technically savvy to suss out suspicious charges.
Sus. Sounds like my kids.
Yeah, you got to suss out those suspicious charges, right? I'm
Yeah.
sure you probably had some interesting dealings with contractors yourself. Maybe that rings a bell for you.
Well, it does. And the prices vary drastically from person to person. Like we just had a panel done in Ohio and it was $500, but I've also had, panels done for $2,000, right? It's, it, sometimes it's just like, can you go to Home Depot website and be like, what's a panel cost in this place? And
Yeah.
how much are they charging me in labor? And if they're charging me this much, who is installing this? Like, is it, is this like if there's a plumbing thing, is this Mr. Rooter? Like I find they're the most expensive company I've ever dealt with.
Yeah.
But, or is it just like your local plumber, right? For instance, right? So it depends on what you're trying to do. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I think
I would
it's very
say
much.
I did estimating for many years in construction and things like that, and the general rule of thumb is if you just take the materials, the raw materials, if you can figure out how much materials you need, divide it by 0.3 or consider it to be about 30% of the price, and if it's give or take, the total price works out to be that the materials are about 30%, then it's probably a fair price. If not, then consider it, right? Say, why is it, what do you charge per hour for labor? And it might be $100 or $120, but 10 hours of labor is $1,200, right? For one guy. Is it taking you a full day? Is it 2 days work, 3 days work? Ask them how many days work it's going to be. And to be truthful, a lot of contractors underestimate how many days or maybe flat out lie. But anytime I ask a contractor how long something's going to take for a complete gut reno, it's always 2 months.
It's always a short. It's a short. It's always for
2
those
months.
things, and if it's based on their pay and what they're getting, then it's really long. It's the opposite.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's like a electrician. Oh, it's going to take me a week to pull all these wires. You're like, then it's going to be very expensive and long. It's the opposite.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
the thing about that is, that just triggered something for me. It was like, if you, depending on what they're doing and depending on who is doing this, if it's a licensed electrician, maybe like, if it's just, because we're real estate investors, we're going to be like savvy on what it costs, or at least want to get the best price possible. I've found sometimes you can have some of the mundane parts of like, an electrical pole, maybe having like their apprentice do all the pulling, right? And they can walk away and they can just come back and check it when they're done, and they can activate, set up the panel, they can, activate all the outlets and plugs and switches. But for all the pulling, you don't need somebody really expensive. You don't want to be paying someone top dollar for that sort of stuff.
I mean, absolutely. And they should be, like, if they're running a smart business, they should be taking that initiative themselves. Why would you, regardless of what you're going to charge, why would you put the most skilled and expensive guy to do the most menial tasks, right? It doesn't make sense from a business perspective. And I mean, everybody's got to make money, and it is important as well to do, I do my own estimates also to make sure that the price I'm getting isn't too cheap, because, there are people that will substantially underbid a project or simply don't know how to do their own bidding. And they'll just throw a number out that they think they can do it for, and then they get halfway into the job, realize they can't do it, and they either come back for more money than the proper guy would have cost you, or they just abandon it, which is even worse, because then the next guy wants to start fresh and tear everything out that they did because they did it wrong, right? You
No,
know,
that's honestly, that's the worst situation to get in with contractors, is that they bid this wrong. Because especially if you're playing with other people's money, that's the worst thing, to go back and have to ask for more money,
yeah.
especially if it's substantially different.
Yes, yes. And I mean, just to go back to those first three houses, I got a number of bids before I started work. And I still remember one was $20,000 to do both. And like, there's just no way. Like, I just, that wouldn't cover the materials. So I knew that that guy didn't know what he was doing. And I went with the middle, and the highest one I think was 80 to do both. And they may have done a much better job. I don't know, but the job that I did get was sufficient.
Yeah.
And and like I said, I haven't had any problems. It's not like the roof leaked. I had work on the roofs done. Plumbing, knew everything, right? Pretty much knew everything. So it was reasonably done for what needed to be done, and it rents for the appropriate amount for the area. So
Yeah.
kind of middle ground is what I usually shoot for when I find get a couple of quotes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I like the idea of getting the multiple quotes too, because then you can try to, honestly, you can try to see who missed what. Like, sometimes you're like, hey, this one doesn't include, you just look at if you just look at the bottom line and like, oh, they're both, $60,000, or one's
Yes.
60, one's 80. And you're just like, I'm going to go with the 60,000 just to save myself some money. But, does it include the deck? Like, one's replacing the deck, because one's cutting trees down that could fall on the house. The other guy's just like, I'm just going to do the inside cosmetic stuff. One guy's doing siding. Like, once they're, it is really
Yeah.
hard to compare apples to apples. But if you, at least to see what's missing, ask the other
Yeah.
guy. You're like, hey, I saw some pictures, and I don't want to say that I got another quote, but I'm like, saw some pictures, and there's a tree that looks like kind of scary. There's a deck that looked kind of sketchy. If I'm not saying I want to do it for sure, but what would it cost me to put a 12 by 12 deck on, replace that, and tear the other one out? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you always want to get the quotes to be what they call apples to apples, right? Where they're both quoting the same scope of work. You can always pull things out of the scope of work later, but it's always a good idea to have them looking at the job in as close to the same way as possible. And also, voice your expectations. You voice your expectations, and you just make sure that they're bidding the same scope of work.
Yeah. So what's the future, Orion? What's your plan on working on next? I have more free content. So if you're interested, I created a PDF guide and a video to go along with the PDF guide to complement it. And what the guide is all about is the 5 most common mistakes that Canadians make when investing in the United States. So if you're interested in this free guide, go to CanadianInvestingInTheUSA.com/mistakes. And let's go back to the podcast. And it's free.
Well, I'll tell you what else I did. So, like I said, I have 11 doors in the States now. So I did refinance at one point, and I used the money to reinvest a little bit more back in Canada. I ended up buying a business from a retiring owner, and used a bit of creative financing. So I bought a triplex with a commercial unit, which is the business's unit on the main floor, and I used conventional financing for that. And then for the business, which pays the rent for that commercial unit, I just used 100% seller financing. So it was a $1.1 million purchase, and I put $150,000.
So 1.1 is, sorry to cut you off. Like, is that?
Yeah.
That's the business, or that's the business and the building?
That's the business and the building together.
Okay.
And I put 150,000 down, and of that 150, I got 50 back in cash, and then the other 100 was just basically a straight down payment. And it ended up being 100%, more than 100% cash on cash return in that first year, including what I pay myself, and profit. So that was a good investment. And so I've been focused on that business, as well as doing the occasional thing in the States, more just maintenance and repairs, and trying to just improve the returns on the existing 11 doors in the US. But I'm sure I'm going to keep buying more. I'm looking at the Florida market as well. I'd like to get into some more appreciating assets, since I do have a good base of cash flowing assets at this point.
Yeah, no, that that's what it is. It's all about getting multiple streams, different styles, diversity. Like I work in several different markets, and it's kind of nice when one market's up, another one might not be up, and you just can kind of play with whatever. Sometimes flipping's working the best, sometimes doing the burrs is the best. So the strategies change, and by being doing lots of different things, it makes it well, we live the entrepreneurial lifestyle is an interesting cash flow chunk here, a good stream here. You get the nice stream, but then you have like an air conditioner gets stolen, and it goes a big chunk one month, and it's kind of a wild ride.
Well, we talked about this before, but I think there's actually a really good opportunity for the savvy real estate investor to buy up businesses that also own the property that they occupy, whether it's in Canada or the US, because there's a delta between the valuation on a business and the valuation on real estate. So if you can buy a business, and they might trade at 3 times. 3 times the net earnings, or the seller's discretionary earnings for the business, but the building might sell at 10 or 20 times the net rent, right? So you can just, if you buy the business and the building together, you can then just charge yourself a bit more rent, and because the cap rate or the valuation on the building is so much higher based on the rent, you'll instantly vastly increase your wealth by increasing the rent that you're paying, but not lower the value of the business substantially, because it trades at a much lower cap rate, right?
Yeah, you have control both sides.
Yeah, I mean, if you were, if the business, let's say, is worth 400,000, and it's 4 times the seller discretionary earnings, which would mean that the seller discretionary earnings is 100,000, and the building is worth, I don't know, $1 million, right? And it's a 10 cap. If you just increase the rent a small amount, you're going to vastly increase the value of the building, right? And then you can sell the business, and then you can sell the building and increase your wealth that way. So that's kind of more the path I think I'm going to play with.
As long as you're not too aggressive with either.
Yeah, it can't be ridiculous. You can't just like bottom out the business to nothing, or have it, an outrageous amount of rent, because I'm sure that the bank will flag it. But just like in commercial rental real estate, like if you can increase the rent. If you have an apartment building in 100 units and you increase the rent by $50 by putting in a dishwasher, or even nothing, if you just increase the value of it, that apartment building can go up, $1 million overnight, just because the rents went up a little bit. Oh, yeah. And that goes for all commercial real estate, right? So I think there's a good opportunity in that space.
Oh yeah. Yeah. All those little value adds are golden in the, adding your carports, charge extra, all the different amenities you can have.
Electric car charging. I'm adding electric car charging to one of my places right now. I think that's going to be, everyone's, they're mandating electric cars now. So everyone's going to want to charge at home, and including renters, right? They're going to need somewhere to charge, and throwing in a relatively inexpensive charger and future-proofing a property is a huge value add, because a lot of people aren't going to put that in, or they'll be the last ones to put it in. So that's a great value add, I think.
Awesome. Anyway, we're starting to go on to a totally new topic, which honestly I love. We will have to come back and do another one. But Ryan, love this topic. I love talking about contractors, and honestly, I love talking about getting cheap properties too. So we hit both of them on the nail on the head there. If people wanted to get a hold of you, how do they track you down?
You know what? Just connect with me on Facebook, Ryan Spenser on Facebook. You just see this beautiful face and you'll know it's me, I guess.
Yes, that's the one. Awesome, Ryan. Well, like always, thanks for coming on the show. This is great.
All right. Thank you.
That was a nice video. Bye.